and welcome to the 5th System Modeling Conference. I'm Fatima Zare, a postdoc researcher at Capability Systems Center, UNSW Canberra. I'll be your host today. I'm speaking from my home in Canberra, which is located on Ngunnawal land. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people who are the traditional custodians of these lands on which we are virtually meeting today, and pay respect to the elders of Ngunnawal National people, both past and present. I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in attendance today. I also acknowledge the traditional owner of the lands upon which each of you are located. This year's conference theme is Reset, Ready, Go, co-designing the future through modeling. The world has changed and we need to adapt to these changes to be future ready. The unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, extreme climate condition that we saw during the last summer, especially in Australia and now in Canada and US, economic and political disruption and finance problems that illustrated the risk of living in an optimized world, which everything is economically optimized. Adaptive and holistic solving approaches are most needed to tackle this complexity and uncertainty of the future we face. In the spirit of this theme, we aim to facilitate a critical discussion and exchange of knowledge during this 2 days conference. SMC is a 2 days conference. Today we will have 10 talks, and tomorrow we will have 3 workshops. If you haven't registered yet for tomorrow's workshop, please feel free to register through the link that I posted on the chat. And I'd like to ask Associate Professor Santos El-Saba, the Acting Director of Capability Systems Center, to officially open the conference. Santos.
Thanks, Fatima. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. I am excited to join you today and open the 5th IEEE Systems Modeling Conference, which will run today and tomorrow. Today, I'm like Fatima, I am meeting you from lockdown, unfortunately, from my hometown, lovely Canberra, on the land of the Ngunnawal people. And I would like also to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land of the Ngunnawal people on which I'm meeting you today. The Capability Systems Center aspires itself to be a leading world-class institution in research and a go-to for government and industry in all decision-related problems in capability science. And modeling and future science is a key pillar of our capabilities that we offer. It underpins lots of our services and products that we deliver to our clients and partners and collaborators. When we started the Systems Modeling Conference 5 years ago, what we had in mind was to build a forum to exchange ideas about the fundamental science of systems thinking and systems modeling. We thought of this community as a community that transcends applications and problems domains. And I'm excited to see the conference now in its 5th year. It's growing and growing strongly. Last year, like many other conferences, we turned virtually, but like any risk, it brings opportunities, because now we could bring people like our prestigious plenaries and our speakers from all over the world. So uncertainties bring risks and opportunities. Today, the conference theme is about using models to co-design the future, because we believe that models could play a significant role in the way we think about the future, and it could shape the way we think about the future. This year, I am delighted to be joined by the Australian Society of Operations Research, ASUR, as a sponsor, official sponsor for the conference. I am also excited to be joined by very prestigious two plenary speakers, Professor Robert Lambert and Professor Debbie Ashendon. Both are international leaders and scientists with significant multidisciplinary and multi-domain expertise. I'm sure their talks will be highlights for the conference and they will leave you with lots of thoughts and ideas. I invite you to make the full of the conference experience. Still time to register for tomorrow's workshop, so please go ahead and register. And I hope you have a very lively day of exchange of exciting ideas. Thank you so much and enjoy. Over to you, Fatima.
Thank you, Sandos. As Sandos said, we are welcoming to our keynote speakers. And also, I'm really happy that we have Professor Warren Walker with us today. Yeah, he is one of he and Robert and Debbie. They are really one of my what can I title? But it's like 5 years that I'm following their papers, and I'm really excited of having them here. So for today, we will start with our first keynote speaker talk. But before that, I would like to say some points about today's event. So please note that this event is recorded and will be available on the Capability System Center website sometimes next month. During the talks, please make sure that you are muted, but after that, during the Q&A time, you can unmute and ask your questions. If you can use that hand raising things icon, that would be great. If you don't like to ask by microphone, it's okay. Just post your questions on the chat, and we make sure that we will answer your question during the Q&A. Most of the talks today are recorded because it's a virtual live conference and we wanted to make sure that everything goes smooth, but there are some live ones as well. But all Q&As will be live, so that will be a great time for discussion, and we encourage you to join us and ask your questions. Well, our first keynote speaker is Professor Robert Lambert. Robert is a principal researcher at the RAND Corporation and director of the RAND Frederick Hardy Center for Longer Range Global Policy and the Future Human Condition. His research focuses on risk management and decision-making under condition of deep uncertainty. He is a convening lead author of Working Group 2 of the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, the 6th assessment report. He was a chapter lead for 4th US National Climate Assessment and a member of California Climate Safe Infrastructure Working Group. He is a member of Harvard Geoengineering Advisory Panel. And beside many other exciting things that he has done, he is an author of the book Shaping the Next 100 Years, New Methods for Quantitatives. Title of his talk today is Decision Making Under Deep Uncertainty in Support of Co-Design and Transformational Change. Okay, we will watch Professor Lambert recorded talk, but he's with us, and he will answer your question after the talk during the Q&A. Feel free to post your questions on the chat during the talk. We will come back to that. So let me share my screen with you.
It's a real pleasure to speak to you today. I'm particularly intrigued and excited to be by your conference title, Co-Design the Future Through Modeling. I've been thinking a lot recently about transformational change and its connection to two ideas, co-design and decision-making under deep uncertainty. And I really welcome the opportunity today to talk about these concepts in the context of the themes of your conference. So our society needs transformational change in many areas. And I think an important question for a community like ours is, can modeling help? So the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, defines transformation as a change in the fundamental attributes of a system, including altered goals or values. And climate change is clearly an area which implies some type of transformation. Transformation really with climate change seems inevitable. Either we hold atmospheric greenhouse gas concentrations to those approximating the Paris Agreement goals, which requires significant transitions in energy, land, urban and infrastructure and industrial systems at unprecedented scale and speed. And if we don't do that sort of transformation, then climate change implies unprecedented climate-induced changes in many human and natural systems. So we basically have a choice. We can guide the transformation or just let it happen to us, and guiding it seems preferable. This leads to this concept of deliberate transformation, which is one that is envisioned and intended by at least some societal actors. But the challenge is transformations can turn out badly and certainly can turn out to have many unintended consequences. So what is the modeler's role in improving deliberate transformations and making them better than they might otherwise be? So it's well known that quantitative decision support tools can help people make better decisions. And so referring here to the work of Daniel Kahneman and others, but decision support refers to a wide range of often computer-based information products, which are designed to help counter human biases and lower the effort needed to assemble relevant scientific and other information in a place to make reasoned decisions. And in some contexts, decision support is relatively straightforward, even if technologically difficult and even spectacular. And so we all have wayfinding apps on our smartphones, which can help us find the fastest way to get from one place to another. In this case, from Rand, where I work, to the Hollywood Bowl, where you can go to concerts. Not a simple decision often, given traffic. This figure is from a weekend when that's not such a problem. But these wayfinding apps can help you find questions like, where do you want to go, how to get there, and what's the best route. The challenge is transformation presents non-straightforward decision contexts, which are characterized by complex systems and contested outcomes, which make the decision support problem significantly harder. So transformation involves complexity and complex systems are ones that consist of many elements, often interacting in ever-shifting, often disordered ways. And so I show here the Cynefin framework, which contrasts complex, complicated, simple, and chaotic systems. And so in particular, complex systems often respond non-linearly to small perturbations. Their overall behavior can often be understood but not predicted. And then managing a complex system is fundamentally different than managing a complicated one. It offers more opportunities for small intervention to result in significant changes. But we need, rather than a sense, analyze, and respond sort of management approach, which may be more appropriate for complicated systems, we more need a probe, sense, and respond. And deliberate transformations involve complex systems, and so are at best something we can influence but not control. Another big challenge is that transformation often involves wicked and contested problems. Wicked problems from the work of Riddle and Weber originally are not well bounded. Different groups and individuals see them differently. They've got large, deep scientific uncertainties, nonlinear dynamics, and often not well understood until the formulation of a solution. In other words, it's deciding on the solution that tells you what sort of problem you have. There are two broad approaches, at least this is useful, I think, of having a taxonomy of ethical reasoning about transformative social choices. And this is based on work of Amartya Sen. And so Amartya Sen labels these transcendental reasoning and relational reasoning. And transcendental reasoning, which is associated with John Rawls, begins by envisioning a consensus on a common vision of an ideal world to be, and then uses that vision to inform near-term choices. And there's a lot of virtues to this approach, including provides a clarity of purpose, helps communicate and coordinate systems of multiple actors. And oftentimes a lot of our analytics, say based on utilitarian social welfare functions and so forth, and some ideal optimum state, embody this idea of transcendental reasoning. In contrast is this idea of relational reasoning, which starts first with the claim that, in fact, transcendental reasoning is not ultimately possible or useful, because no transcendental vision may in fact be possible, nor is it really desirable, because the diversity of values and in different interests across different people is in fact a feature and not a bug of a desirable society. And it's not actionable, because we in fact don't know enough about how the world works to understand how an ideal goal translates into near-term actions. So instead, we may need to do this relational reasoning, which pursues an iterative process of a social choice where we debate with one another, use the best information we have, and incrementally try to distinguish of the choices before us, which ones are a little bit better and which ones are a little bit worse, and nudge ourselves towards the little bit better choices. This may be a more realistic way to proceed, but one of its big challenges, it's very hard to ensure that a sequence of loosely connected actions over time converge to acceptable outcomes. There are many proposed processes, however, for this relational reasoning, which are try to get their hands around this challenge. So I just have some flow charts here, but there's in the upper left is the iterative risk management process from the IPCC, which is a basis for decision-making on climate change. So we begin by scoping, by trying to understand what it is we are trying to achieve, what is the problem context, how do we measure or evaluate good from bad solutions, risk, what options are at our disposal. Then there's an analysis phase where we identify options, assess them, evaluate trade-offs, we implement, and then we iterate around, because once we start implementing and analyzing, we may change our problem, our framing and scoping, our sense of what the problem is. There's transition management, which is a school of thought, which has a similar sort of flow, orienting, action, agenda setting, and activating. A big focus here in the transition management is who are the actors, and putting together a visioning team and then expanding the group of actors using the vision to bring more people into the process. RAND has begun an initiative recently on system change. And again, it's got a process which looks at vision, design, analysis, and engagement, and tries to draw those together. So if we kind of pull these together, all of these different processes have a couple of common themes, which are really sort of in fundamental tension with one another, that we, in systems of autonomous actors with different values and views, all these processes aim to balance the idea of pulling together common goals and principles as a guide to action within an iterative process of reflection, action, observation, and response. So the claim here is that these tools of decision-making under deep uncertainty, which I'm now going to spend the rest of my talk talking about, can help support such processes. So the traditional quantitative methods for policy analysis, in which we may use our simulation models for, and that may be what we often have in mind. We say, oh, we got a simulation model, how are we going to use it to inform decisions? Were designed for systems with a single relevant decision maker, well understood behavior of the system, and basic agreement on the objectives among the audience for the analysis. But the world we're now facing, this world which requires transformational change, requires methods and tools that embrace a diversity of priorities, goals, and values among participants, deep uncertainty regarding the consequences of our action, and often decentralized polycentric decision makers. And there's a whole set of these decision-making under deep uncertainty methods. There's a recent book that goes through the field, so a must-have. But it describes a number of methods, all which have the attributes necessary for this new world of transformational change. They're multi-scenario and multi-objective, which is important because that avoids privileging needlessly any one view in the analysis. It provides a forum for many different views to come together and debate and use the analysis. It's exploratory, which is appropriate under conditions of deep uncertainty because we don't know for sure how the system works or where it's going. And these features support, and the design of these methods is to support deliberative processes of co-production and co-design. The robust decision-making is one common DMDU approach, the one that much of my work is based on. So I'm going to wrap the rest of my comments here where I introduce these methods to you or review them for those of you who are familiar with them. And so I'm going to focus on robust decision-making, but the comments I have here are more broad for across the field. Okay, so I'm going to say a little bit about robust decision-making, talk about then three key ideas: stress tests, adaptive strategies, and supporting co-design. So traditional policy analysis begins with a consensus understanding of the future. So we begin by asking ourselves, what will future conditions be? And often this is really just a point forecast. Properly, it's a joint probability distribution over a set of future states of the world. But once we have examined the evidence, debated, and come to a consensus on what the proper description of the future is, we can then use that to rank different near-term policy options. And then we may do some sensitivity analysis to see how sensitive that ranking is to various options, to various uncertainties. And this set of methods can be characterized as predict, because we first want to understand what the conditions are, and then we act based on those predictions. And predict and act can be an incredibly powerful set of tools. And I always say you'd never get on an airplane where the people who built it and fly it don't work very well in that paradigm. But there's a whole class of problems under conditions of deep uncertainty where this process breaks down. What becomes predictions turn into tunnel vision, and under conditions of deep uncertainty, there's huge pressures to underestimate the uncertainty, to overestimate your confidence, because if you admit how uncertain we really are, then the analysis breaks down. Competing analyses contribute to gridlock because a policy recommendation is predicated on a forecast, and if you don't like the policy, you attack the forecast, which often is easier to attack than the policy. And this idea that we often know a lot about a problem that is not predictive, but can help us make better decisions, and in particular avoids unpleasant surprises. And we can pull together these conditions under where predict and that can break down as deep uncertainty, which occurs when the parties to a decision do not know or do not agree on the likelihood of alternative futures or how actions are related to consequences. So to inform decisions under deep uncertainty, we invert the order of traditional analysis. So instead of starting with using our analytics to say, what will the future be, and then ranking strategies based on that, we turn that around and say, here's a set of strategies. We may use our analytics to identify what those are, but here's our set of strategies. And then we ask questions such as, use those analytics to identify conditions where those strategies make sense and where they fail, or one strategy might be better than another. And the idea here is that these are higher confidence arguments we can make with our analytics under conditions of deep uncertainty. We can say, under these conditions, this strategy would fail. And under these conditions, it would succeed, meaning it would meet our goals. And so those are high confidence statements. And then we can use that information to identify new and revised strategies that are more robust. So the goal of this agree on decisions analysis is not to predict the future, but to reach consensus on strategies that address multiple objectives over multiple futures. So robust decision-making, which is an agree on decision method, synthesizes 4 key concepts. It's a form of risk and decision analysis. So as risk and decision analysis has decision structuring frameworks. It focuses on trade-offs and provides quantitative, systematic information on trade-offs. But traditional decision and risk analysis is often prescriptive. It's designed to tell you what to do, as opposed to open up a space for exploration and deliberation. RDM draws on the idea of scenarios, which engages very explicitly with the idea of multiple worldviews, multiple ways of seeing the world, and often focuses on the plausibility and not probability of those futures. So it focuses on what if questions as opposed before and often instead of the what is going to happen questions. Scenarios are often very good and important for fostering deliberation. The third idea is this idea of stress testing, also in some areas known as red teaming or assumption-based planning, which is a RAND method for testing plans. But the idea of all these is you begin with a plan and identify assumptions on which it depends. And in particular, what are the assumptions, if they go wrong, that would cause the plan to break, that is, not meet its goals. And the final idea is that of exploratory modeling, that rather than use our models as a mirror of the world and for which we can try to make predictions, rather we use models to map assumptions onto consequences and try to understand and frame the problem we have before us. So just to say a little bit more about exploratory modeling, since that's central to this idea of how to use simulation models to inform co-design and transformation. In the original work of my RAND colleague, Steve Bankus, he divided models up into 2 fundamentally different approaches. Consolidative models, which gather together all the information we have about a system into a single package. It can be validated and then can be used as a surrogate for a real world. And this is really the sort of model that often forms the basis of science and engineering. We try to make predictions to validate our understanding and then use that understanding to design and influence the world. There is, however, an entirely different class of models, which are exploratory models, which, as we said, map assumptions onto consequences without privileging any one set of assumptions. And it turns out, and particularly in a world with ubiquitous computation, that exploratory modeling can be a powerful tool for supporting iterative problem solving. Exploratory modeling can help us generate hypotheses, identify special cases, and assess properties across many cases. And in particular, this gets us to the idea of robust strategy. So we can ask, what are the cases in which a strategy would fail? And what are hypotheses about strategies that work well over a wide range of futures? There are an emerging set of computational tools which facilitate RDM and DMDU and this agree on decision process. visualization tools, new types of models. There's a network model, but agent-based models. This idea of scenario discovery and diversity algorithms, which allow us to take large databases of model runs and say, what are the key characteristics, the key distinguishing features that distinguish a run which suggests our strategy meets its goals from ones which misses its goals? And so there's a whole variety of emerging algorithms can help answer that question in a decision relevant way. And then multi-objective robust optimization, that once we've identified these scenarios where strategy succeeds and fails, we can ask, how can we do better? What mixes of strategies do better across this entire space? And high performance computing makes all this possible. And here we have increasingly have integrated packages that pull all these tools together and allow us to conduct these analyses. Okay, so let's dive through examples of each of these pieces. Stress tests. Here what we do is we run a model many times, identify those model runs where strategy meets its goals, misses the goals, and then perform analytics on the scenario discovery analytics on that database and say, what are the key characteristics that distinguish meeting and missing our goals? So what I'm showing you here is a recent RAND study, which looked at the national decarbonization strategy of Costa Rica. This was a modeling study, though organized with a large deliberative process across the country. It took Costa Rica's plan to become carbon neutral by 2050, stress tested it over a wide range of technical and economic and other sorts of assumptions, and then first it found that in many scenarios, in many cases, the decarbonization plans yielded net benefits over a wide range of objectives. It was economically good, environmentally good for jobs and so forth. But there were cases where the plan would fail on one or more measures. So I show a scatter plot down here where this couple of modeling system has been run over many different scenarios. A green dot means the plan met all its different goals, and the orange, red, and yellow dots mean it missed one or more of its environmental and economic and societal goals. And then on the right is the results of this scenario discovery process, which looked across this large space of model runs and said, what are the key determinants that would cause the plan not to meet its goals? And so this summarizes that. So very high economic growth combined with high costs for conventional vehicles and high fuel efficiency of conventional vehicles would cause the plan to miss one or more of its goals. This information can then be used to fold back into another iteration of the planning process and say, how can we do better? One way to do better is to have an adaptive strategy. That is a strategy which is designed to evolve over time in response to new information. So here are several definitions of robust strategies: performing well over a wide range of future, trading optimal performance for less sensitivity to broken assumptions, keeping options open. And these often lead to the same sorts of strategies, not always, but the keeps the options open is the one that touches on most explicitly on this idea of adaptive strategies. And so robust strategies are often adaptive, and we can think of that as near-term actions, shaping and hedging. So a shaping action makes a positive future more likely to come about, and a hedging action is what we do if a negative future comes about. Signposts that lets us monitor what future we may be heading to, and a contingent action, which is what we do if we observe a signpost. The RDM stress tests I just showed you help inform and evaluate robust strategies. I won't go into this, but this sort of strategy has been put into place in real life. This often infrastructure plans, and this is the adaptive strategy for the Thames River barrier, which follows this adaptive strategy, near-term action, signpost, and contingent action structure. And this starts to be a planning manifestation, quantitative planning of the iterative process of relational reasoning, which we discussed earlier. Okay, so let's turn to this idea of supporting co-design. Participatory processes can prove very important to effective policy action. They can enhance legitimacy and inclusion. They can combine all sorts of different knowledge streams, scientific, local knowledge, different sorts of knowledge. So it gets a much richer knowledge base than we would have otherwise. And it can connect estimates of consequences with participants' values, so we understand what it is that's important. Deliberation with analysis is a process that's often used in DMD and RDM analyses, which is a participatory learning process which stakeholders deliberate over problem framings supported by analytic products responsive to those framings. And then you go in this iterative process where you use those analytic products to understand the implications of the problem framing that the participants have come up with, which may cause them to reframe again. It's useful when new problem framings emerge through stakeholder interactions with analytics and each other's. It captures this idea of frame reflection, which is often needed to address wicked problems. And so, for instance, in the things we were showing you, the stakeholders might deliberate on an initial policy. Say in the Costa Rica case, they've got initial policy, the national plan. They've got a series of objectives. The analytics then provides decision relevant information by stress testing that plan on a variety of futures. That goes back in, and the community can discuss whether the results of the stress test are acceptable or not, or whether they want to revise the plan, perhaps by making it adaptive. Transformation often involves multiple jurisdictions. And so this is an example of multi-objective robust decision-making work by Pat Reed and his colleagues at Cornell. And what's really interesting here is that this involved multiple jurisdictions. And so what's going on here is in the state of North Carolina, there's 4 neighboring cities. They had been operating their water systems independently, but because of climate change, they connected those water systems, which allowed them to do a better job of managing some sets of risks, and particularly the risk of drought, extended drought. But coupling the system created a whole variety of new risks. So both you were reducing risks and increasing risks by this set of actions. And so what Pat and his team did is they came up with a series in conversation with the 4 agencies, and each of these 4 water agencies in the 4 cities have different sets of metrics and issues that they're dealing with. So they have different situations and different things that they value. So they came up with a series of strategies which consist of short-term rules linked how you operate infrastructure, linked with longer-term infrastructure investment programs, all adaptive, meaning they respond to the current estimates of risks to the system. They examine this over a wide range of instances of these alternatives of strategies of this type over a very wide range of futures, and came up with different options for robust plans, ones that perform well over the metrics for each of the cities over a very wide range of futures. And this was then a set of analytic products that was put into a iterative deliberative process of framing, analysis, reframing, analysis, a co-design process among these 4 coupled but independent autonomous jurisdictions. Transformations also can very much involve multiple worldviews. And a worldview is a comprehensive conception of the world comprising correlated sets of values, beliefs, policy preferences that shape how people understand, judges, and acts in the world. And the idea here is that not only do people start out with different worldviews, but as we navigate a transformation to a new and hopefully better set of social conditions, how different worldviews are going to evolve differently and are going to mediate strongly how people respond and act in this transformation. So this is a recent analysis which looks at how can we use these DMDU RDM analyses to very explicitly address audiences with multiple worldviews. This is a toy problem, so there was no engagement, and it's a made-up problem, but it demonstrates some concepts and tools. So the made-up problem is there's a town on the shore of a pristine lake, proposed economic development, which could increase pollution in the lake, enhance welfare for some current and new residents who would benefit from the economic development, but damage welfare for other current residents whose well-being and livelihoods are tied to a non-polluted lake. Many deep uncertainties. To what extent will pollution degrade the lake? How intensive will it be the development of pollution, and how effective alternative policies? So what strategy should the town pursue? We organize this using the cultural theory of risk around 3 different worldviews, which are characterized by the Holling, ball, and cup resilience diagrams in the top row here. But the one group, the hierarchist, sees both the lake and economy as relatively benign within bounds and something you can manage. The egalitarians see the lake is fragile, but the economy is benign. So they're really focused on being careful with the lake. Individualists tend to see the lake as benign, but the economy as fragile. They also have different views about how technocratic you can be, how aggressive about adaptive management, and they have different goals that they care about. So what we do is we set up an analysis process where we conduct an RDM analysis separately for each worldview. And each of these strategies, like in the Pat Reed example for the North Carolina water agencies I just showed you, evolves over time. We examine how the solution for each worldview performs from the perspective of the other worldviews, and we search for solutions that perform well across worldviews. And what we get is these utopia-dystopia matrix that shows the regret of strategies across multiple worldviews. And so the H and the E and the I in the along the rows here capture the 3 different worldviews. Environment, economy, unemployment, inequality are how these are the different measures that they care about. A colored square suggests that's something that worldview cares about. A blank means it's not. A green means low regret. Another color means higher regret. And what this shows you is how different strategies, in this case, some compromise strategies we developed, perform from the perspective of different worldviews. And again, this is an analytic product that then is designed to be put into this framing, analysis, reframing, analysis, iterative process of co-design among people with very different states of the views of the world, to try to set up a process where people can move forward together. So just to summarize, DMDU helps modelers contribute more effectively to transformational change. Basic ideas here is consider multiple futures, not a single future in planning. Choose futures to stress test proposed plans. Seek robust plans that perform well over many futures, not optimal plans designed for a single best estimate future. Make plans flexible and adaptive, which often makes them more robust. And use our analysis to facilitate deliberation, not tell people what to do. So instead of this, we're looking for planning over multiple futures and just some useful aphorisms. Premature aggregation can often be the root of all evil in decision support. So in other words, probabilities aggregate over futures. We often use social welfare functions that aggregate over different attributes. Keep that to the tail end. They inhibit exploration. They inhibit the ability for multiple actors to come in and see the world from their perspective in the analysis. And we help users seek certainty in their decisions, not in the predictions. And These characteristics should help us modelers do a lot better job to effectively inform, co-design, and transformational change. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Robert. It was really insightful. If there is any question, I just want to check if, Robert is here.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, great. Yeah. Hi.
Okay.
Great. Thank you so much for your great speech. If there is any question, please feel free to join us and ask, or post in the chat box. Yes, sure. Professor Walker.
I just wanted to point out to everyone that the book, the DMDU book that Rob showed on a slide, is open access, free to download. So everyone can get it for free. And it's on the Springer website, and it's called Decision Making Under Deep Uncertainty. So please get it and read it.
Thank you so much. It's great to know. Actually, I noted that I need to buy this, and it's good to know that I don't need to pay for it, because thank you. Yes, Sanders.
Here we go.
Thanks for the great presentation, Robert. I have a question in terms, drawing on your experience working with lots of stakeholders and decision makers. How receptive do you find decision makers to the idea of flipping the analysis flow around its head? And especially for decision makers who are used to using models for predictions and when numbers look good.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And the answer is it depends. And Warren should also weigh in on this question. But we've found most success among relatively sophisticated users who find themselves stuck. That for whatever set of reasons, the more traditional predictive tools are not doing what they need to do, through some combination of them being somewhat distrustful that they're missing things that potential surprises that they ought to pay attention to being in an environment where there's a lot of contention over different forecasts, and they're much better arguing over strategies and arguing over forecasts. We often find ourselves in situations where say one group within an organization is more receptive and eager to use new tools, and others are not. So often we find ourselves in situations where, say, the analysts will use these tools, are very interested in looking at a wide range of scenarios, but say the political leadership, they might find a strategy they think is robust, but base it on predictions that reinforce the strategy. So there's different communication strategies within, but also we've got a whole series of methods to try to nudge people in a lot of our work. Say with the World Bank, we actually had developed a series of games that we would bring into various situations and play deep uncertainty games to acclimatize people to the concepts and then move into the analytics. But again, it depends, and it's a challenge, and part of the work is to get people to engage with these new ideas.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Rob. I think Andrew had a question as well.
Hi. Yeah, thanks. I did. Thanks very much for a very thought-provoking talk.
My pleasure.
It's kind of a similar question to Sondos, but I'm just wondering how you find that kind of adaptive approach to things in an environment like a large bureaucracy, where the decision makers are disconnected from the formulators of the approach, who are disconnected from the implementers of the approach, and they all want certainty, predictability, schedules, plans, and so on. How that sort of adaptive approach sort of lands in those kinds of organizations.
Yeah, I'll definitely let Warren dive in on this one if he likes, because he has lots of experience in a way as well. In some sense, I mean, the adaptive idea is in many ways more intuitive than the full set of deep uncertainty ideas. But for the reasons you suggest is can be harder. For the reasons you mentioned, and then often in a contested situation, one side is, you often find this environmental issues, say that the environmental groups will be worried that if they agree to an adaptive strategy, that once they go home, the people that they're locking horns with will be around and the strategy won't adapt as they intend. I mean, that said, when the adaptive strategy, has some really powerful benefits, then there's a lot of impetus for the agency to go there, right? I mean, and so if you're, water agencies in the American West and in much of Australia, I mean, need to deal with serious drought issues, which often involves mixes of controlling demand, but also major investments in infrastructure, and the notion that you can sequester those investments and make them contingent on different signposts, and that your actions now can be, say, to ready a certain set of infrastructure or technology dimension is a sufficiently compelling answer that it starts to break down a lot of the bureaucracy. And that said, a lot of planning processes even are sort of quasi-adapted to begin with. I mean, there'll be like a 5-year requirement for you to produce a 30-year plan. You have to produce a 30-year plan every 5 years, and so it's sort of an implicit adaptivity, and so you're only taking a small step to say, well, we're going to make that plan a little bit more explicitly adaptive. But Warren, do you want to jump in? And you've had a lot of experience with this as well.
Let me just say that the secret to success of decision making under deep uncertainty is the agreement among the participants to listen to each other, to adjust their worldviews even, and come to partnership. I was fortunate to spend 30 years working in the Netherlands, where there's much more of working together and doing things cooperatively. I would hate to be working right now in the United States, where there's so much polarization and lack of agreement to work together. So I think that that's the secret, to get a group of people of totally different worldviews and backgrounds and criteria that they want to use to sit in the same room and discuss things and work together.
Right, thank you.
Fatima, there's a question in the chat.
Yeah, there is a question from Wall Snow. I think she's joining us, I guess, from New Zealand with the same situation of working from home, because she said, yeah, she said she thanks you. And I think, do you have access? Can you read it yourself?
Oh, I can read it. Yeah, yeah. So Val, right? Val asks, okay, she's explaining why she's chatting. She says, was there a difference between the people in the 3 cultural risk typologies for their acceptance of the inverted process? So, I mean, basically, yes. The way we set that problem up, and again, this was a methodological exercise. And so we were postulating the stakeholders using the risk groups of cultural theory. But the way we set that up is that, in particular, one of the groups, the egalitarians, was very suspicious of adaptive strategies for some of the reasons we were discussing earlier. I mean, they regarded it as technocratic, didn't trust it, and so forth. And so they were in the setup of the problem is that they were in their problem setup, they didn't use adaptive strategies and were very distrustful of the adaptive strategies of the other groups. And then in the subsequent rounds where we try to devise compromise strategies, we postulated we only used adaptive strategies that were in some sense backwards looking and didn't change until certain conditions had been well and irrefutably met. So particularly they focused on pollution levels. So you didn't change the strategy till the pollution level had actually changed and gone down. And then you could change your strategy. You couldn't do it on any sort of perspective sort of signpost where the trend is good, so we think things are going to happen. So that's how we try to get a different, capture those ideas in different worldviews.
Thank you so much. Samana, I think you can join us and ask a question. There are some more on the chat as well, but let's start with Samana.
Dr. Lampert, thank you so much for your nice and interesting presentation. Actually, I have same question like the inverter things. I just want to know a little bit about the RAND inverter. That means how it's work. Yeah, in your slide, you told that that at first the strategy or decision will be taken. So can you please explain a little bit what is the difference actually, or how it's work?
The difference between the predict and act and the agree on assumptions.
Yeah, and how it's actually work. That means how it's a start, or what is the basis of this inverter RAND?
Okay, well, okay. I mean, so we're talking about basically how you organize the analysis, both how you organize the analysis and then what the goals are at each step. So I showed you very briefly a variety of analyses, all of which followed this inverted agree on decision approach. So perhaps the crispest one to discuss with you is the Costa Rica one. And so in that case, the Costa Rica had developed a decarbonization plan. They wanted to decarbonize the economy by 2050, as many nations are trying to do. And so there's a big deliberative process organized by, sponsored by the government, which went around the country and asked people about what their main interests and goals were, and so on and so forth. And then a modeling system was put together. And then instead of trying to predict the likely outcome of this plan, the modeling system was used to stress test the plan against a very wide range of assumptions. And so, and what that means is you take the model, you model the plan and how it interacts with the various energy and transportation and other systems in Costa Rica. And then there's a whole variety, in this case, parameters, which describe different technology capabilities, different environmental behavior, that sort of thing, different responses to the economy. And you look at a very wide, a large set of samples of different values for those parameters, and you just run the model lots of different times, and you make a big database of results. And based on the interaction with stakeholders, there's some criteria for a result that would constitute a success. And if you don't meet those criteria, it's not a success. And so I showed you a color-coded scatter plot where a green dot was you met all the conditions, and then the red, yellow, and orange dots were different combinations of meeting one or more of the stakeholder goals. And then you run these scenario discovery classification algorithms against the database. And the output of that is to say, the key, we've got a lot of uncertainties and a lot of things going on in this model, but the key sets of conditions that do the best job of distinguishing cases where the plan meets from where it misses its goals are the four combinations of parameters as I showed you. So we've taken this very complicated problem and mapped it down to essentially this crisp division of two scenarios, which are defined by values of 4 parameters in this big space, which say, if you meet those 4 conditions, this plan is likely to work. If you miss one or more of those, the plan is likely to fail. And then that's something you bring back to the stakeholders and you try to engage them and get to agree and sort of, come to a common understanding of that. And so instead of, fighting over predictions or trying to convince them that this is the way the world's going to go or this is the way the world's going to go, you come to agree, you use the analysis to get everybody to agree, okay, these are the 4 things that matter, matter most. And if those happen, we meet our plan. And if we don't, we don't. And then you can move on to the next stage of, all right, how might we hedge against some of the ways the plan might fail? And so that's the thought process that follows this agree on decision, backwards analysis. I hope that, does that make some sense? And obviously it's, okay, yeah.
It's a complicated
I dumped
one.
a lot of,
but yeah, it's making sense. And
yeah.
Thank you so much.
So take a look at some of the papers, which kind of goes through this in a lot of detail. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Sure, no, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. So there is lots of thanks in the chat. And just one point, it's not a question, it's a point that coming from a defense background, the transition planning focuses more on predict than act. And I think Lindsay said that it would benefit if we take the same approach of adaptive and engaging. So thanks everyone. If one question came up.
Okay. Lindsay wanted to, so let me give you 2 examples. One is working with water agencies in California, or in the U.S. West, where drought and climate change is a big deal. As Warren alluded to, there's lots of controversy over how seriously to take climate change in the U.S. So that, it's actually less so on the adaptation side than there used to be. But these water agencies would find themselves having diverse constituencies that that they need to serve, with a wide range of views on how seriously to take climate change, how much to invest against climate change. And so the ability to, and then also with a lot of uncertainty in the climate models, particularly around things like precipitation and the prevalence of drought, the length of drought, and so forth. So the ability to develop robust plans started to become very attractive to them, because they could do these stress tests and show that the plans that they were developing were robust over a wide range of conditions, a lot of climate change, impact from climate change, less climate change, and so forth. Similarly, and in some ways even more dramatically, we've been working with transportation planning agencies, which have both policy-driven big changes they're meant to make to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and so forth, but also are in the situation where they their traditional method is to make these 30-year plans and to run these big models and forecast out, how many, if they build this infrastructure, this is what congestion will be like and how many people will be using the roads and so forth. And they find themselves in this world between the time they start the analysis and finish it. There is now a total change in the transportation technology structure. They're tripping on the scooters on the sidewalk as they, go outside their offices. And so, their model is now completely disconnected from things that happened over the last 6 months as opposed to 30 years. And then right when they're trying to get their heads around that, a pandemic hits and everybody stays home for a year, right? And doesn't drive at all. And so, the world has just changed so fast on them that this sort of charade of going and showing 30-year predictions to their boards and saying, okay, this is, you should spend billions of the taxpayers' money based on our forecast when the world has changed twice in the course of time it took them to build the model, much less its forecast range, makes them very interested in new ways to do business.
Thank you so much. So I think that was the last question. Thank you so much, Professor Lempert and Professor Walker, for joining us. If there isn't any more question, which I think there is not, we would go for the next presentation.
Great. Well, thank you so much. It's really great to join you, and feel free to send email if people have more questions.
Thank you. Sure. Thank you so much.
And thank you, everybody, also. I love being here, and thank you, Rob.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Warren. This is the moment where I should have handed the Australian Shiraz wine bottles.
Well, someday when we get to Australia, we'll take the Shiraz. Okay.
Yes, we'll take the Shiraz.
Okay, great. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sanat. Sanat will present his research in a recorded talk that he's with us, and then we will have some Q&A. Let me share my screen with you.
Good morning, you all. The title of the presentation is A Novel Method to Find a Reduced Set of Error-Optimized Solutions for Multi-Objective Optimization Problem, with a case study in Defense Capability Management. Here is the outline of the presentation. First, I'll give you a brief introduction followed by motivation. Next, I'll talk about methods that we use to find the reduced set. Then I'll talk about the case study that we use to test our proposed method to find the reduced set. And finally, I'll give you a brief summary to conclude the presentation. So why we need representative solutions? Most of the real-world problems have many objectives. Therefore, multi-objective optimization problems and their solutions method are of great importance. However, when we solve the multi-objective optimization problem, normally we get a large set of error-optimized solutions. So therefore, sometimes difficult for the decision makers to make their decision in the absence of subjective or judgmental information, like priority of the objectives over the other objectives or the preferences. Thus, a small set that covers the diversity of entire paradigm set is needed. So in the literature, there are several methods to obtain a reduced set or best solution, such as priori methods, interactive methods, and posterior methods. Priori methods often lead to a single solution and depend on the decision maker's preference. In the priori method, decision maker put their preference before the optimization. In the interactive method, the decision maker progressively provides preference information. So, however, in the posterior methods, what we do is first we obtain a parameter set. Therefore, posterior methods give overall picture to the decision maker. And in this research, we focus on the posterior analysis. In the literature, there are several methods to obtain a reduced set, such as clustering. In the clustering, what we do is first we cluster the parameter solutions, then use a representative solution based on the solution at the cluster center or solution closest to the ideal solution. The clustering method might be based on the K-mean clustering. And if you look at this representative solution, which might not include the extreme solution or other isolated solutions. On the other hand, the solution closest to the ideal solution may not represent the entire cluster. So this might bias toward the objective with the highest function value. So therefore, in this research, we propose a method which is based on the connectivity. Now let me tell you how we create a graph for the parameter set. So we have the parameter optimal solutions when we map each solution to a node in the parameter state space. When we connect each node, let's say I, to every other node, if they lie within a certain distance. So we continue this process for every node in the parameter state space. Then finally, we get this kind of graph. Then to find the representative solution, we look at the node with the highest degree in a cluster. So if the node has a highest degree, that means it connects to many nodes in the same cluster. Therefore, that should better represent the entire cluster. So as we use clustering algorithm, now the question is, how do we determine the optimal number of clusters? To determine the optimal number of clusters, we use the silhouette score, which is the mean of the silhouette of each node, which is given by this equation, where n is the number of points, and ai is the intra-cluster distance, and bi is the inter-cluster distance. So here the idea is, if we have a good clustering, what that means is the nodes in the same cluster are closely packed together and well separated from the other clusters. So in other words, we should see small intra-cluster distance and the large inter-cluster distance. So in that case, we could expect the silhouette score of 1 or closer to 1. So here is the proposed method. So we have a multi-objective optimization problems. In our case, we use simulation-based optimization technique to solve the problem. So once we have parameter optimal solutions, as I explained earlier, we construct the graph. Then we use that graph to conduct the combinatorial analysis, which is a clustering analysis, and we use a silhouette score to determine the optimal number of clusters. We then find a representative solution based on the connectivity for each cluster. Unlike k-mean clustering, this combinatorial clustering can identify the other extreme solutions and extreme solutions or isolated solutions. Then we give the combination of representative solution and extreme solution to the decision maker. We call it as a reduced set. Now let me briefly discuss about the case study, our case study. So for the first time, we model and solve a joint problem of facility location, capacity allocation, and workforce planning problem in the military. in the military. So we apply this model to a realistic case study which arises from the recent modernization plan of Royal Australian Navy, where they are planning to add 12 new attack submarines. So in particular, we consider 3 fleet transition options discussed in this special report. So here the problem is, for a given fleet transition option, we want to find the optimal strategy which optimizes the objective or objectives of interest. Now let me tell you what are our objectives. For a given fleet transition options, what we need is we need to maintain a higher number of available fleets. So therefore, our first objective is to maximize the fleet availability. Submarine needs maintenance, which require maintenance workforce and other facilities. Therefore, our second objective is to minimize the total cost. As a third objective, we want to minimize the total interregional transactions. So where the interregional transactions are the number of times submarine access the dock outside its home base location. So now let me talk about what are our decision variables. So we want to assign 12 new submarines to 3 submarine ports in Australia. So we want to find how we allocate these submarines optimally. Submarine maintenance require workforce. Therefore, we want to find out when to hire the workforce and what amount to hire. And the maintenance need other facilities. Therefore, we want to find when to construct these facilities and what amount to construct. But sometimes the submarine needs maintenance outside of their home base location. Therefore, we want to find out what is the optimal configuration of alternate maintenance region preference. The crew is needed to operate the submarine. Therefore, we want to find the optimal crew recruitment rate. Now the question becomes, our problem becomes, given the decision variable, which combination or which optimizes, what is the optimal strategy which simultaneously optimize our 3 objectives, which is maximize the fleet availability, minimize the total cost, and minimize the total interregional transaction. To answer that question, we use the simulation-based optimization. Here, simulation model is based on the submarine simulation model, which is developed by the Capability Systems Center. And the optimization model utilizes NSTA2. So here is the proposed simulation-based optimization algorithm. And here is the submarine simulation model. In the submarine simulation model, for the given simulation inputs, which are the decision variables that I explained previously, it simulates the actual system undergo and it produces the output like fleet availability, total interregional transactions, and other costs, etc. These are the para-optimal solutions that we obtain for 3 fleet transition options we call as S1, S2, S3. Now the question is, now here is the reduced set obtained from the classical K-mean clustering. In the K-mean clustering, we observed 7 optimal clusters. And here is the reduced set obtained from the proposed method. So with the proposed method, we obtain 6 optimal clusters. So now, to show that the proposed method better capture the diversity of the entire Pareto set, we compute the high volume indicator and the maximum spread. The high volume indicator measures the volume of the trade-off space. So therefore, higher the high volume, better the solution is. On the other hand, maximum spread compares the para-optimal solutions with the ideal and the worst solution. Therefore, the value of 1 is preferred. So in the first 2 rows, so I have shown the hypervolume indicator and maximum spread, which we computed for the reduced set which obtained from the k-mean clustering. And the last row, I have shown the results with the proposed method. As you can see, both high volume indicator and maximum spread is higher with the proposed method, which indicates our proposed method will capture the diversity of the entire Pareto set. In summary, here we proposed an our method to find a reduced set, which is based on the connectivity of the graph, which is constructed for the Pareto optimal solutions. And the proposed method, the reduced set obtain extreme solutions as well as representative solutions. So we applied this proposed method to a realistic case study in Royal Australian Navy. And our result revealed that the proposed method will capture the diversity of the Pareto set. So therefore, decision maker can make a decision with ease. Also, the proposed method can be applied to the Pareto set obtained from any multi-objective optimization problems. So here are the references. Thank you. So if you have any questions, please ask me.
Thank you so much, Hassan. I think it's Q&A time. Sanat, are you with us? I can't see you.
Can you see me? I think you can see me now, right?
Yeah, yes.
Hi.
Thank you so much for the presentation. If there is any question, please join us. You can raise your hand or you can write in the chat box. There are 2 questions from Fuad in the chat box. So first is, how do you identify the ideal solutions? In other words, do you mean ideal solutions are the best obtained solution among all other solutions within the population at that iteration of the algorithm?
So how do you identify the ideal solutions? In other words, do you mean ideal solution are the best obtained solution among the population and iteration of the algorithm? No, actually in here, what I did was, first we obtained the Pareto optimal solutions. So so in here we use a simulation optimization technique, and the optimization model based on the NSGA2, at the end, we get the Pareto optimal solutions. Then once we have the Pareto optimal solutions, if we have the preference of the objective, then we can identify what will be the optimal configurations correspond to that solutions. As an example, so in the military, the priority, when I talk about the fleet transition option, the priority is the availability. So if we need the preference, if we know the preference, then we can go with the solutions with the highest fleet availability. But if we don't know the preference, what we can do is we can obtain the representative solution. In here, yes, the ideal solution is the best solution in the Pareto optimal set. I think that is the quickest answer. So once we have ideal solution, then we can identify what solution closest to the ideal solution. Does it make sense, or did I answer to your question? So, okay. So in here, our objective is maximize the fleet availability, then minimize the total cost and minimize the total interregional transactions. Here, the ideal solution is the solution with what will be the maximum fleet availability and what is the minimum cost and what is the minimum interregional transactions among all the parameters. So that
and there is another question from Ford as well.
does the proposed clustering approaches influence the computational time of NSGA? No, actually, first we obtain the parad-optimal solutions, then we do the clustering. So in that case, there is no influence of the proposed clustering method on the NSGA2.
There is another question from Lindsay.
Thank you for the presentation. Are you able to invert the flow analysis to reflect the adaptive reasoning from Hobbes earlier? Well, actually, so in that case, I need to think about that. In this case, I think we may be able to, because we can use the adaptive crossover and mutations instead of fixed value, fixed probability for mutation and crossover. But I need to think about that. Currently, I don't have a good answer for that.
Great, thank you so much, Sanat. And okay, there is something else in the chat box. The second question, one thing
that is feature of transition planning is that sometimes you accept a suboptimal for temporal period time in the pursuit of another goal that is available. Yeah, that's true. So if we know the preferences, then we can do that. But what happens if we don't know the preferences? Then how do we assign the weights? If we conduct topsies, then how do we determine the weights? That was the question. To alleviate that questions, we propose a clustering method which find the representative solution and other extreme solution. So that's the idea behind this research, the basic idea.
Thank you so much, and thanks everyone else. If there is, okay, there is another question.
Yes.
Could you please?
What was the question? After obtaining the Panado solution set, I reckon that the solution of the most appropriate solution is usually done by a multi-criteria decision-making method such as AHP or topsies. Actually, this is, yeah, if we use topsies, then you have to assign weights, right? That means you need to know the preference of the objectives. So that's why, to alleviate that problem, so we propose this clustering method, which can find the representative solutions and the extreme solutions. The next problem is, again, the topsies. Reducing the solutions and can influence the result of how does this approach of reducing the set. Okay, actually, in this case, what we propose this method because if we give the thousands of parad-optimal solutions, then sometimes it is difficult for decision maker to make decision in the absence of subjective or judgmental information. So instead of giving thousands of representative solutions, we give a small set, might be around 10 solutions, which cover the diversity of the entire set. Then the decision maker has flexibility to select his or her own solution. So that was the idea behind this project.
Great, thank you so much. I'm not sure if Sandos was going to ask a question or she changed her mind.
No, I think I just want to go back to Lindsay's question and have a stab at it in terms of, can we use this method when we invert the analysis? And I think yes, because the starting point for using this method is that you have generated a solution space. Whether you have generated this solution space using the traditional simulation approach, or you have already inverted the workflow when you were generating this solution space, you still have reached this point of creating the solution space, and then you start doing the cluster analysis on the top. So I think this is how I visualize it. It fits within the adaptive decision-making algorithms. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Sanat.
Okay.
If there was any more question, please feel free to send an email to Sanat. We are a bit behind our plan, so I will jump the one of the speakers in the plan because they didn't manage to get online now. We will move them to afternoon, but I will go for the next speaker. Sorry if I don't pronounce your name right, but I'm trying my best. Mushfiqur Rahman. Hopefully I have said it right. So we will watch his recorded presentation, and he's with us, so we will come back and have a Q&A time. Thank you.
Hello everyone, it's Mushfiqur Rahman. Hope you all are safe and well during this critical time of pandemic. Welcome to a presentation on implementation of artificial neural network on regression analysis. At first, what is artificial neural network? Artificial neural network can be seen as an artificial biological structure identical to the working mechanism of human nerve system. It incorporates a significant number of local processing nodes that typically operate in parallel and queued in layers. It has self-adaptation capability achieved by backpropagation. The figure inscribed here resembles a simple structure of neural network having input layer of 2 nodes, 2 hidden layer with 3 nodes on each, and the output layer with single node. Now comes the regression analysis. Regression analysis is used to estimate the relationship between a dependent variable and one or more independent variables. It tries to find the best fitted condition with minimal total variation followed by maximal explained variation. It is used in predictive analysis like forecasting, financial problem analysis, decision making, risk analysis, substrate selection, etc. There lie various methods to make accurate prediction in regression analysis. We selected artificial neural network as the potential option because of its lower computational cost and higher accuracy. A significant number of studies have been conducted to increase the accuracy of regression analysis over the recent years. Having conducting a thorough analysis, we found that conventional classification and regression algorithms mainly work with linearly separable data. If the data is of nonlinear, then conventional algorithms incorporate higher dimensional space in order to process the data. Setion et al., which was our interest of focus, incorporated a hybrid approach of Harris-Fox optimization with support vector regression in order to perform regression problems. However, they achieved moderate level performance in comparison with others, consuming a significant amount of time, which seemed to be not optimized. The attributes of artificial neural network that motivated us to use it in regression analysis are its ability to recognize hidden information, pattern, or data, its ability to draw a fine distinction between different classes to determine without complex mathematical model, implementation of regularization that makes the model to be compatible with similar unknown datasets. Motivating by those facts, we are determined to apply artificial neural network in regression problem to have high accuracy with least computational cost. Our objective was to implement the artificial neural network to increase the accuracy in regression analysis with lower computational cost. The contributions of our study are: it proposes a two-step artificial neural network to increase forecasting accuracy in regression analysis by minimizing forecasting error with lower computational cost. First step, learning rate and number of hidden layers are tuned, and in the second step, the number of nodes in each hidden layer is tuned. The Taguchi design of experiment is used to select the best parameter. Finally, the performance is evaluated using a benchmark dataset named AutoMPG. Here comes the flowchart. Here, at the first step, the learning rate and the number of hidden layers is selected as hyperparameter. Then the levels of hyperparameter are selected. Then the set of all effective combinations of hyperparameter is formed to conduct the design of experiment. The first combination is chosen, and according to this, the architecture of neural network is formed and the iteration begins. After completing subsequent iteration, the weights and bias term of each node are stored and the model goes on next combination of hyperparameters. After evaluating all possible combinations, the best combination is determined using the Taguchi design of experiment. At the second step, the architecture of neural network is partially fixed with the combination of hyperparameters achieved from first step. The only requiring exploration hyperparameter is the number of nodes in each hidden layer. Like previous, the best combination is achieved using the performance evaluation through the Taguchi design of experiment. We have considered mean absolute error, root mean square error, and root mean absolute percentage error as our metrics of accuracy. The subsequent equations are given below. Here comes the achievement of effective combinations of hyperparameter through the Taguchi design of experiment. For learning rate and the number of hidden layers, we consider three-level design on which we achieved 0.01 for learning rate and 5 for number of hidden layers as the best value. For number of nodes in each hidden layer, we consider 5-level design on which we achieved 150 for hidden layer 1, 150 for hidden layer 2, 100 for hidden layer 3, 50 for hidden layer 4, and 10 for hidden layer 5 as optimum. In the prediction analysis curve, we put the actual value on x-axis and the predicted value on y-axis. We can see a strongly positive relationship with maximum points are significantly closer to the best fitted line. The value of R square is 0.74 and the value of adjusted R square is 0.73. From the convergence curve, it is easily seen that the both training and validation loss have been drastically minimized with subsequent iterations. In case of mean absolute error, the testing mean absolute error of the proposed artificial neural network algorithm is 3.28, which outperforms other approaches. The training mean absolute error is 3.25, which is very competitive in reference to the best value of 3.10 achieved by the hybridized approach of Dragonfly algorithm and support vector regression. The minimal computation time is 2 achieved by hybridized approach of sine cosine algorithm and support vector regression, and for proposed artificial neural network, we achieved computational time as 2.1, which seems to be very close to the minimum value. In case of root mean square error, the testing root mean square error of the proposed artificial neural network is 4.80, which seem to be very close to the minimal value of 4.79 achieved by the hybridized approach of Harris-Fox optimizer, sine cosine algorithm, and Gray-Wolf optimizer with support vector regression. The training accuracy of artificial neural network is 4.56, which is competitive in reference to the optimal value of 3.90 achieved by the hybridization of Dragonfly algorithm and support vector regression. In case of mean absolute percentage error, for both training and testing mean absolute percentage error, the proposed artificial neural network outperforms the other approaches, having testing mean absolute percentage error of 12.45 and training mean absolute percentage error of 12.45. At the recapitulation, in brief, we can say this study applied an artificial neural network to construct a regression model effectively and efficiently. To tune the parameters, the weights and bias through backpropagation effectively, We obtained adjustment in the architecture of neural network based on the intuition of Taguchi design of experiment analysis. To test the effectiveness and efficiency of the model, we initiated an experiment on the regression model using the well-known benchmark dataset AutoMPG. The extensive computational experimental result revealed that the presented artificial neural network model is successful to train regression models to predict the continuous variable efficiently. Comparing with the state-of-art algorithms, it is seen that the neural networks can dive deeply through the data than other approaches. When the data imposes nonlinearity, conventional algorithms incorporates higher dimensional space to draw linearity. However, that very often subsequently leads to overfitting, and thus the performance between training and testing impacts very drastically. As the artificial neural network can explicitly draw the hidden information or pattern without incorporating higher dimensional mathematical calculation, thus obviously there lies a consistency between the performance of training and testing. Moreover, significantly, one of the promising aspects of neural network is the achievement of better accurate performance with a comparatively very lower computational cost. Thus, when it would come to adapt big data or complex data, it would be able to process the data with an efficient performance in addition with less computational cost. In the future, a hybridization approach of neural network with conventional regression like support vector regression or decision tree regression would be potential approach to have a better performance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mushfiqur. If you are online, I think you are here. Thanks so much for your talk.
Welcome.
Is there any question? I can't see anything on chat, but if you have any question, you can just raise your hand. Sumana, do you have a question?
Yes, please. Thanks, Mushfiq, for your nice and interesting presentation. I just have one thing to know that what is the reason behind using Taguchi design of experiment? Or how reliable it is in this case? Yeah, please.
Actually, my intention was to implement a simple but effective approach to determine the most effective combination between the hyperparameters. And obviously, it seems to me that it was quite effective and simple in respect to me.
Okay, another question. In Taguchi design of experiment, you consider up to hidden layer 5. So what about if it's more? That means it can be more, it can be up to 10 to get the more optimal or accurate result. So
yes,
how
it can be 10 or it can be higher, but actually in respect to my result analysis, hidden layer 5 was quite enough to get a better result in comparison with the other results achieved through the other algorithms.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other question? Okay, we have a question from Fuad, which says, did you conduct primary experiments to adjust the levels for tuning the parameters by Taguchi DOI?
Yes, I conducted preliminary experiment, and through my preliminary experiment, I just covered the upper bound and lower bound of the levels and which levels would be effective. And it seemed to me that after conducting the preliminary experiment, the level that I stated in my paper was the effective.
Thank you so much. Okay, if there was any more question, please feel free to send an email to Mushfiqur, and thank you so much for your talk. We need to move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Hassan Turan. Hassan will introduce our sponsor, Azure. Azure generously provided one-year membership for all of you SMC participants, and Hassan will tell us more about Azure and this. Thanks, Hassan.
Thank you, Fatma. Let me share my screen, if it is possible. So I will give a short presentation. Okay, let me try again. You should let me share it. Host disabled attendee. Okay, let me try it again. Maybe I should send it earlier.
Okay. It's okay. Can you do that now? I just
yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let me put it here. Okay, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are living right now. So I am one of the National Committee member of the Azure. And this is a brief introduction, brief summary of what is Azure about. So much of the more detailed information is available on website as indicated here. Okay, why it is not changing it? Okay, this is the agenda. I am pressing this one. Okay, who are we? So Azure is established in 1972, and we have like 200 members, paying members. Probably we have around 1,000 members who are not paying. So we are quite active recently. So we are a member of national other operation research societies, such as the International Federation of Operation Research Society. And who are our members? Most members are academics, but we have lots of engineer, analysts, students, logisticians, many different diverse backgrounds. We have a member, and what area they work on it. So I can fill in this slide with the areas that we are interested in: combinatorial optimization, continuous optimization, many more things. But the common theme is we use this tool to make a better decision making. So I would like to give a example. Actually, one of our founding fathers, George Danzig, who invented this simplex algorithm, was working in the Rand Corporation, that like the previous keynote speakers during the Second World War II and in the 50s before joining the Stanford University. And when he is asked this question, what is operation research? He explained it is just applied mathematics, and I 100% agree with him. So what are our free events? Most active is the Thursday afternoon seminars. It is fortnightly. You just need to subscribe to our mailing list. We sent you the invitation. It is over the Zoom. And if you want to give a presentation, just email me or the Azure email address. So we will fix you a date and time so you can present your research. And there's around 30, 40, 50 attendees. So there's interactive seminars going on lately. So you can find the previous presentations. They are available. You may watch them as well. Another ongoing thing is Azure conference. This year it is together with the MOSIM 2021. It will be in December. And if it is permitted, it will be on Sydney, and it will be available also online as well. We do our sister organization, DORS, Defense Operation Research Society, and they do yearly national conferences as well. And we are not active on this one as well, but panels, tutorials, discussions, there are some examples from the previous years, but we cannot able to do this kind of activities recently. So you may check it, our webpage as well. We provide awards. If you are a recent graduate or submitted your PhD thesis, we have Rising Start Awards. If you are more seasoned individual, we will also offer the Red Post Medal. So it is theory and practice over in Australia. For membership, just go to the webpage and you fill in this form. So we are still not optimized that process. And just email back us and just add a note. So you attended the SMC 221. So we will give you a free membership and we will add you to our email list. So we will not spam you. Don't worry about that one. So we are also active in many platforms, Twitter. You can see us in the YouTube as well, previous presentations from 2016. So you match that once as well if you're interested in. So most active platform is right now is LinkedIn. So you can approach us from us to LinkedIn as well. So that's the end of the presentations. I will write my email address in the chat box. If you have questions or asking for information, just approach me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. That's great to know that you will give us a membership, because I was one of that 1,000 non-paid members, and it's good to not feel guilty whenever I join the webinars. Just a question from myself. I have attended several of the Thursday webinars or talks. Most of them are or the ones at least I attended were more model focused. I'm a bit model plus participation and decision maker interactive person. I was just wondering if Asur is interested generally in this kind of topics, a bit more soft interactive and participatory topics as well.
Sure, we will interested in how it goes is supply driven, you know, so interested presenters email us and we schedule them. So it is not like we approach the people and ask for that. So if people is interested in giving presentation, yeah, I also consider, as I said at the beginning, if you are helping the decision making, it is considered OR. Maybe you guys don't consider yourself as an OR, but we consider everyone as an operational research. So everybody is welcome. So it will be another theme for us as well, rather than hardcore mathematics and those algorithm things. It will be interesting for our audience as well. Just email me and we will find you good spot for you the presentation. But as you said, most recent presentation is much more mathematical and model oriented. I have to admit that as well.
Thank you so much. So feel free to fill out that form or send an email to Hassan and ask your questions. Our next speaker is Hans Bastein. We will watch the recorded presentation from him, and then I can see his name. Yeah, I can see his name in the audience, so he will join us for Q&A, live Q&A. Thank you so much, and I will share the screen.
Hello, I'm Hans Bastian, and I want to present our paper titled Involving Motorbikes in Blood Pickup Services, a Mathematical Modeling Perspective. This paper is written by Raffi Pohan, Hans Bastian, Setio Mara, Ahmad Rifai, and Nurmaike Normasari from Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia. Blood is an important commodity with many essential functions that support humans' life. The availability of blood product is also essential for numerous medical treatments, including organ transplantation, surgery, cancer, and blood disorder treatments. And improper management of the blood supply chain may cause the scarcity of blood and may result in patient deaths and/or complications. And on this case, blood supply chain management is concerned with managing the flow of blood products from donors to patients through 5 elements: donors, mobile collection sites, blood center, demand nodes, and patients. And however, challenge in managing the blood supply chain arise due to the perishable characteristic of blood products. Blood logistics is clearly a time-constrained task for blood pallet. For example, product pallet, it must be processed 4 until 6 hours after the production. And our objective in blood logistics is maintain quality in constrained time while minimizing operational costs. And motorcycle is an important vehicle for logistics nowadays, especially in city logistics. Motorcycle is flexible for traffic and small routes, and it also has a cheaper economic operation. Thus, in this study, we are interested in analyzing the impact of involving motorbikes in blood pickup services. And the objective of our study are first, model the involvement of motorbikes in blood pickup services with a mathematical model approach. Second, develop a mixed integer linear programming model for a blood pickup routing problem with heterogeneous vehicle, PPRP VP. And third, compare our proposal with the traditional blood pickup services with a homogeneous transportation mode or truck only. And then fourth, perform analysis on several important problem parameters. And to the best of our knowledge, this form of solution has not been studied yet, as previous studies in blood supply chain management and blood pickup services only focus on the assumption of using a traditional collection car or truck as the transportation mode, like you and Iswari done before. And from motorcycle use perspective, it is widely used for logistic service, but use it for BVRP also has not been studied yet. And BPRP is the extension of well-known vehicle routing problem with time windows. BPRP concerned with the optimal routing of a fleet of vehicles between a depot and a number of customers that must be visited within a specific time interval called a time window. And in this study, we extend the BPRP to consider the presence of multiple transportation modes or heterogeneous vehicle becomes BPRHV. And we assume that use of motorcycle will generate more optimal solution in blood pickup routing problem. And here we model it as mixed integer programming. And this is the mathematical model of notations and also decision variables. And objective function in our model is to minimize the total travel time of the vehicle. It corresponds to the minimization of task completion time as well as the total delivery cost. And for the constraint number 2 until number 5 is a classical VRP constraint. And constraint number 6 is a vehicle capacity constraint. Constraint 7 until 8 is a time window constraint for the collection nodes. And the constraint number 9 is a perishability constraint of the blood product. And constraint number 10 until 11 is a defined possible values of decision variables. And here are some points of our experiment designs. The BPRP HV model is developed and solved with Groby 9.0.1 with runtime limit of 1 hour. And there are 30 test instances are generated as a base to perform the numerical analysis. And each of this instance, a portion of a pickup node is subjected to a randomly generated hard time window. And the blood spoilage time is set as 6 hours. And this study consider different speed and capacity of truck and also motorbike. And the first observation, it is the effect of altering speed ratio. We set the motorbike to be varied with a set 100%, 110, 120, 130, 140, and 150 of the truck speed, which is set to be 40 km per hour. Meanwhile, the capacity of truck and motorbike is set to be a constant at 1 compared to 0.2, which is a base of an average size comparison between those two transportation modes. As the average speeds of the motorbike increase, the occupation rates of motorbike also rises, which indicates the tendency of the decision maker to exploit the benefit of a motorbike in traveling the road faster. As the occupation rate of motorbike enlarges, the total travel time and the total distance traveled by truck also gradually decline. And then for the second observation, we observe the effect of altering capacity ratio. We set the capacity of the motorbike to be varied within a set, 10%, 20%, 25%, 30, 35, 40, and also 50, 15 of the truck capacity. On the other hand, we set the speed ratio of the truck and motorbike as 1 compared to 1.5 to answer that the occupation rate of the motorbike will not be non-existent. And the increasing value of the motorbike load capacity drives a similar impact to the increasing value of motorbike speed. As the capacity ratio of the motorbike to the truck escalates, decision maker logically tends to deploy the motorbikes more, it resulting in a higher occupation rate of the motorbike, which in turn will decrease total travel by truck and reduce the total travel time. And the capacity of the motorbike will determine the maximum number of motor pickup nodes that can be served by the motorbikes, and therefore will affect the reduction of travel time that can be made by developing the motorbike. Decision maker might be less interested to deploy the motorbike if this mode can only serve only one consumer. And observation 3, we observe the effect of number of pickup nodes and time window density. As the number of pickup nodes escalates, the average occupation rate of motorbike also tend to increase. This implies that although it has a limitation on the load capacity, the motorbike can be utilized by the decision maker to be served the pickup nodes with a smaller value of demand, which typically appears more as of the total number of nodes increase. The occupation rate of the motorbikes tend to increase as the density of the time window escalates. This implies that the decision maker can obtain a benefit from the presence of a motorbike when facing a highly time-constrained situations, since the motorbike can be deployed to serve a portion of nodes that have a tight time window or similar time window to the one served by the truck. And from this safety perspective, this is the tendency of high-speed riding alongside the natural characteristic of blood pickup services, as time-constrained tasks might result in higher accident risks. And second, for the managerial discussion, it could be an environment aspect of using motorbike is also need a consideration. Although it only needs a lower fuel consumption, it has a limitation of load capacity, which may result in a requirement of performing multiple towers instead of single large one. And third, economic perspective, for a small and near order use of motorcycle will benefit from a cost reduction, but we will need consider its use if we try to see a wider perspective of blood supply chain, which more often involving bulky storage than a smaller storage. And the last is quality concern. From the perspective of quality, transporting blood products commonly require cold chain storage, and we will still need to assess quality of blood when cold chain storage is in use. And then several future directions can be derived from this research. And first, we have discussed that the perishability of the product implies that this product needs to be handled carefully with a cold chain system. In this regard, research on designing the motorbike equipped with cold chain box for the blood pickup process could be an interesting direction. And secondly, for our results suggests that involvement of a single motorbike can enhance the performance of the blood pickup system. Therefore, further research can analyze the scalability of this proposal from safety and economic perspective. And lastly, our analysis was limited to a modeling perspective, and some assumptions made here may not be feasible on the real-life environment. Thus, extending this research will with a real case study could be meaningful contributions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Hans. If there is any question, please feel free to post on the chat box or just use your microphone to ask it.
Thank you, Fatimi. I would like to assist Hans and other co-authors to answer the questions, if possible.
Yes, sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So there is a question in the chat box which says about the, do you have access to the chat box? Oh, you are muted. Yeah, you are muted, we can't hear you.
Yeah, thank you. It seems that there are questions in the chat box. I would like to try to answer them. Okay, so the first one from Fuad. Since the quality of blood could be time sensitive, hence I just wonder if you consider the influence of these factors against the traveling distance, vehicle speed, and vehicle carrying capacity while constructing the model. Yes, first of all, we would like to introduce the blood pickup rhythm problem as the extension of the classical TSP as well as the classical VRP. And actually, the problem is pretty similar with the vehicle routing problem or traveling salesman problem with time windows, except that we also add have a one addition of additional constraint of the quality constraint of the blood platelet product, which usually need to be processed within 4 until 6 hours, as well as our presentation previously. So from there we have to consider by the time that we pick up the blood product from the pickup node, we must bring them to the depot node or the process node before that 6 hours. So we must consider the vehicle speed as well as the travel time variables in order to construct this model. And for the, I hope that this answer can satisfy your question. And the second question, does the fleet size or the available number of motorbikes influence the performance of solution? Actually, in this research, we haven't considered the presence of multiple motorbikes, but if we come back to the part when we try to the sensitivity analysis, when we try to alter the value of the capacity of the motorbike, when we try to increase the capacity, that means that also means that we also try to add multiple motorbikes, right? And we can also say that, and we see that when the capacity of the motorbike increase, which also means probably that we can also say that we try to multiply the number of the fleet of the motorbikes. We can look that the quality of the solution that we get, it's much better from the travel time perspective. Yeah, thank you. Maybe there is another question.
Thank you so much. There isn't any question in the chat box. So if there isn't any more question, we can move on. If you have any question, feel free to email Hans. I think his email was in first slide. So thanks, Hans, and thanks, Setio, if I'm pronouncing it right.
Yeah, thank you, Fatimi.
Thank you. So that was all for the first part of the conference. We now have 15 minutes break for lunchtime. We'll be back at 1:10. and there will be 4 more talks, starting with our keynote speakers, Professor Debbie Ashenden talk. The title of the talk is "How do you smash it all together? Exploring how to model information warfare." I'm really excited about that talk. So please join us back at 1:10 for this talk, and for more 3 talks after that. Thank you so much, and see you back at 1:10. To say some points about our tomorrow's workshops. Please feel free to join us. You can register via Eventbrite link, which is in the chat box. And the workshops are mainly on the same topics as today's. Well, our next keynote speaker is Professor Debbie Ashenden. Debbie holds the DST Group University of Adelaide Chair in Cybersecurity. In addition, she is a professor of cybersecurity at the University of Portsmouth and a visiting professor at Royal Holloway University of London. Debbie's research interests are in social and behavioral aspects of cybersecurity, particularly in finding ways of patching with people as well as technology. Okay, our next speaker is Shahrukh Khan. We will watch his recorded presentation, but I think, yeah, he's here. I can see his name in the audience. And then we will have live Q&A. Thank you.
Hello everyone. The title of this paper is Sustainable Electricity Generation from Hazrat Shahjalal Airport, Dhaka, a milestone for green energy innovation. I am Shahrukh Khan, the third author of the work. The other 2 valuable members of this paper and work are MD Asifuzzaman Khan and SK Kafi Ahmed. Now I'm going to present you the background of this work. As you all know, carbon dioxide and hazardous gas emission have increased recently. The reports show it has increased 50% in last decade. The reason behind this is burning of fossil fuels and using up natural resources to meet our energy demands. Unfortunately, this demand is increasing day by day. In the next 2 decades, the global demand of energy will increase significantly. One of the main consumers of this energy is the airport industry. For instance, in China, the airport industry consumes up to 8% of the total energy in all transport industry. Another example, in Indonesia, one of the terminals use up to 8 megawatt electricity just for lighting purposes. So to deal with these issues, the scientists and the researchers are inventing new ways which are eco-friendly and green initiative to generate electricity. The topic of our research and this presentation is almost similar. We're implementing RPG to produce electricity. So what is RPG? RPG, or the road power generation, is designed to utilize unused energy or kinetic energy from any vehicle and transform it to electricity. For example, a moving vehicle, it can be a car, it can be a bus or anything else. So we can use this technology to improve and to produce more electricity in the airport as well. The government of Bangladesh has proposed an extension for Hazrat Shahjalal International Airport, and they call it the third terminal of the airport. So the JICA, or Japan International Cooperation Agency, and the CAB, the Civil Aviation Authority of Bangladesh, have been working on the expansion project for a few years now. So these new fleets of the aircraft will move past this RPG technology, and it will increase the electricity production. Currently, the airport can host up to 8 million aircrafts. And in future, in 2035, it is predicted that almost 27 million aircraft will be hosted in this airport. So these new fleets and the new taxiway, which will be built very soon, can increase the opportunity to produce more electricity from this proposed method. So there is some caveat to this, like we are not using exactly the road RPG method. We're not using the road bumps, but in our research paper and in our work, we're proposing something different. We're proposing a conveyor roller, which will be used instead of the bump. So what will happen? The aircraft will move towards the conveyor roller. The nose wheel of the aircraft will transmit the mechanical energy to the proposed machine, and it will drive the mechanism, right? The belt, it will drive the belt, and the belt will then move the shafts, and the shafts will generate the electricity. This is how we are going to produce electricity from an airport taxiway. This will be installed in a taxiway because we don't want to get into the hazards of takeoff and landing hazards. Like if we put it in the runway, there maybe have some problems with takeoff and landings. So we want to avoid that. Therefore, we're proposing it to be installed in taxiway, and it doesn't depend on the weather. It doesn't depend on the sun or the wind or anything like that. It totally depends on the traffic flow. If we have more aircraft, the production of the electricity will be increased more. This is the whole notion of this project, right? So this is how our project will look like. The model will look like. So as you can see, we have a aircraft here, and we have a aircraft nose. It will drive this belt, and you can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 shaft here. The conveyor belt will drive the chain, and it will also move those shafts, and those shafts will generate the is connected with the generator and some circuits and stuff like that, until it will produce the electricity. And then the produced electricity will be distributed accordingly according to necessity. So how do we calculate, like how much we have to predict, right? How much electricity it will produce. So therefore we have made an estimation and prediction. So what you have done is we're considering 5 aircrafts, ATR 72, 5 types of aircraft, ATR 72-8, Boeing 737, Boeing 777, and Boeing 787. So we're considering this because they are the most popular and most flown aircraft in Hazrat Shahjalal International Airport. And what you're going to do, we need to find the CG, the center of gravity. Why do you need that? Because we need to find the normal force. And to find normal force, we'll need to find the weight of the aircraft. And to find the weight of the aircraft, we need to find the CG, right? So how do you calculate that CG? We use this equation here. We're going to use this equation to, we're going to use this equation to calculate the CG. And after calculating the CG, we'll calculate the load, the static load exerted by the nose wheel. These equations here, they will help us to calculate those force. So our target is to find the normal force here. And in the first equation, you can see we have the mass of the aircraft, the acceleration, the T represents the thrust, then there's drag D, and mu R is the coefficient of friction, then we have load, and we have lift force. Similarly, these are the forces we have, and then we have to find the Fn, the normal force, right? So after finding normal force, we will be able to find the friction force or roller resistance, right? So as we can see, like Boeing 777 is exerting more force to the conveyor belt because it has more weight and it is a wider body aircraft. So therefore, it's gonna produce more power in the future. That's the prediction here. So if you're going to calculate the RPM, because the nose wheel will drive the mechanism, and it will have some torque. So we need to find the torque first. Then the torque will provide the RPM, right? So the RPM calculation will do that with this equation in the seventh equation represents the RPM calculation. As we have 4 shafts, so we are multiplying this with 4, right? So we can find the torque and the RPM for every 5 types of aircraft. Similarly, we'll use this electricity diagram, like this circuit diagram, generate the electricity. And for stabilizing the electricity can be difficult for any kind of renewable energy. Therefore, we are using Jenner diode to stabilize the electricity production in the system. And these formulas will be used to calculate the overall output. From this table, you can see Boeing 77 produces highest amount of power, then 787, Boeing 737, and Dash 8. And ATR 70 produces the lowest amount of energy because of its lesser weight, and it's a very narrow body aircraft, so the aircraft will produce less energy. So from these calculations, we can conclude in 2 ways. Like if we have higher amount of traffic flow, we're going to have higher amount of energy and electricity. Similarly, if our aircrafts have like more weight and it has more wider body, we're going to produce more electricity. So the first one we have calculated using the aircraft movement data to predict this model. Like according to the projection, this projection, we can say in 2015, when we had like 8 million of traffic, aircraft traffic, we could have produced 39.4 megawatt electricity in that year. But as we didn't have that technology yet, that's why we could not produce this much, right? This is a prediction. Similarly, in 2020, we could have made 63.8 megawatt, and in 2035, we'll produce 142.5 megawatt electricity using this model. So in conclusion, we can say, like, unlike any solar panel or any other devices, for example, the wind tunnel, wind turbine, and those there's other ways to produce sustainable energies. Unlike those, our proposed model is not dependent on the weather or the sun. It's solely dependent on the movement of the aircraft, movement of the traffic, and stuff like that. However, further study is needed to improve our model, because we haven't considered dynamic analysis here. We have considered some part of it, but we did not go detailed inside of it, because this is the initial project, so we haven't gone detailed into that. And external and internal resistance, for example, the friction forces between those shafts and belts, we haven't considered that in our calculation. So those can be included in the calculation for predicting precisely how much electricity we can produce. Similarly, we need to look into this matter as well. Like, for example, we need to think about adverse weather condition. For example, the snowing, those raining, these conditions we have to investigate, like how it will affect our system and how can we protect them, right? And the most important part is we have to build a prototype. We have to make sure that it works properly. If we're successful in building the prototype and we can go forward, I think this research work on this specific topic could help us build a self-sustained airport in the future. Thank you so much for giving me time. And these are the references we have used. And thank you so much for having me here.
Hello.
Thank you so
Actually,
much.
all 3 authors are present here today. So if any have any questions, we are ready to answer.
Oh, good to have all the authors here. And thanks for the presentation. If there is any question, please put in the chat box, or feel free to raise your hand and ask the question. Oh, I can't see any question in the chat box. Okay, there is a question from Andrew. So he asks, do you anticipate the wheel will be rolling, or is it the device designed to operate at least on the rolling resistance of the aircraft?
Actually, thanks for the question. I'm going to answer this question. The thing is that the aircraft actually in the taxiway, when aircraft is rolling in the taxiway, that time aircraft is not that much of speed up. So basically, we are not considering aircraft speed at this stage. So that will be studied in our future study. So we are not considering that rolling resistance at that stage.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Is there any other question in the audience? If there was any more question, please feel free to email Shahrukh and Ahmad. Sorry, I can't. I don't know.
Asifuzzaman. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know who is the last authors. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And I think we need to move on for the last presentation, which is the one that we shifted from morning. And there was another presentation from Salman. If he's in the audience, it would be great if he send us a text, because the video is not working well, the other one. But if not, this would be our last presentation. So I will share with you the next presentation just in a moment.
Hello everyone, this is Asma Husna Chora from Chittagong University of Engineering and Technology, Bangladesh, and my co-author Jannat Ezerin from Chittagong University of Engineering and Technology, Bangladesh. Thank you for accepting our paper and giving us the opportunity to present our paper Dong 6 in the 5th IEEE Systems Modeling Conference 2021. We are about to present our paper entitled A Qualitative Analysis for Implementing Supply Chain Risk Management Practices in Bangladesh in the event of earthquake. Introduction. Bangladesh, with approximately 152 million inhabitants, is at greater risk of moderate to severe earthquake. Years of research have given a variety of solutions for earthquake tolerance as total safety is not possible. Recently, supply chain risk management has gained the attention of practitioners and academicians. This study aims to provide an overview of supply chain risk management and determine how supply chain management may be applied for earthquakes in Bangladesh. Objectives. What we want to achieve. The study's main objectives is to overview supply chain risk management practices for the earthquake in Bangladesh. However, the specific objectives of the studies are to explore how supply chain risk management can be implemented for earthquake and its suitability check for Bangladesh, to find out the challenges of practices supply chain risk management for the earthquake in Bangladesh, and to provide some recommendation based on findings. Here is the methodology on how we conduct our study. We have started our study with through literature review. Then we have collected some secondary data from journal papers, websites, etc. After the collection of the data, the study is approached by qualitative analysis. We have prepared a model on supply chain risk management for earthquake. Then we made a SWOT analysis on supply chain regarding earthquake in Bangladesh. And next, we have made some strategy regarding SWOT analysis. Later on, the study is discussed based on the inter-analysis and make some suggestions for the future. And we have completed our study with the conclusion. Literature review. Supply chain risk management has received a lot of attention as one of the most effective ways to reduce catastrophic consequences. The dynamics, hazard, and uncertainties of catastrophes and operations are the part of supply chain risk management. Recently, there has been a considerable rise in the research of supply chain reliability. Bangladesh's system is not very robust, particularly in the service sectors. There are examples of supply chain management being used on a small scale in the manufacturing industry. Although the supply chain risk management system has received a considerable attention, it is still not widely used in Bangladesh. Many firms in the industry sectors are now interested in adopting supply chain risk management to mitigate the risk. The study generally defines a feasible supply chain risk management strategy for Bangladesh to minimize the earthquake risk. Now I'm giving the floor to my co-author, Jannat, to complete the rest of the presentation.
Thank you for giving me the floor. Hello, everyone. Our next slide is the history of earthquake in Bangladesh since 1950. Bangladesh is divided into three seismic zones. Zone 1 representing the high risk one, Zone 2 moderate risk, and Zone 3 low risk. Here we are representing a magnitude of earthquakes in Bangladesh since 1950. The earthquake's maximum magnitude is 7.8 that occurred in 2015. 6 earthquakes of magnitude 5 hit Bangladesh in 2020. Further, there has been some possibilities of a severe earthquake may hit Bangladesh in future. Supply chain risk management model for earthquake. Risk identification, risk management, and risk reduction. We have divided it into 3 steps. Risk identification, including all the lack in structure that may lead to more danger. Risk management regarding all the management steps we can take during and after earthquake. Risk reduction is the combination of risk identification and risk management steps for alleviate future risk. SWOT analysis of supply chain risk management regarding earthquake in Bangladesh. Strength. In strength, we have long-term benefits that are achieved and earthquake risk are optimized. Any size institution or residential building can make this plan. Creating a plan and taking proper prevention will reduce economic loss of the country. In weakness, we have no simple model to maintain. Training is time consuming and only help to lessen the effect of the hazard, don't prevent the earthquake. Lack of literature on supply chain risk management in the aftermath of an earthquake in Bangladesh. In threats, the strategy will only aid to a limited extent in the event of an earthquake. Popularity amongst everyone will require several years. Opportunities. The plan can start from the resources available for execution. The plan will help in adapting with expected situation. The plan will give appropriate assistance to the victims. The plan will help to achieve effective recovery. Discussion and findings. The research involved proposing a possible effective earthquake emergency supply chain model, considering the difficulties in the mitigation of the present earthquake situation in Bangladesh. The research method is a qualitative study based on secondary data gathered from journal papers and online data sources such as websites. The proposed study's chain supply risk management model is for earthquakes that has included a strategic way for risk minimization. The proposed supply chain risk management model for earthquakes has included a strategic way for risk identification, minimization, and post-hazard management. To evaluate the potentiality of the model with a SWOT analysis is done. Conclusion. As Bangladesh is a developing country, a disaster like an earthquake can hamper the economy. Proper management not only reduces the risk, but also it helps to overcome the post-disaster effects. This article suggests a long-term solution that may not prevent the problem, but indeed mitigate the effects. From training the people to taking proper steps, this article shows a planned earthquake management model. In this paper, a strategic way is suggested that could be used in industries to have a safe environment during the earthquake. Although earthquake is not an alarming yet in Bangladesh, a proper strategy can ease the earthquake effect on a large scale, saving lives and economy. Research questions in our paper and their answers. First question, why does Bangladesh require supply chain risk management in the event of an earthquake? A systemic supply chain risk management model is very important to mitigate the risk of an earthquake, and small earthquakes have impacted Bangladesh in recent years, as we have shown. How much would the idea of earthquake risk management via supply chain activities minimize earthquake hazards? In this study, a model is developed and provided with specific explanations that will be useful for earthquake supply chain management in Bangladesh. Supply chain risk management model for earthquake comprises three approaches: risk identification, risk minimization, and risk reduction. What issues may limit supply chain risk management methods in Bangladesh? Inadequate literature regarding this, lack of awareness, training, and promotion may limit the SCRM to a great extent. How can practice of supply chain risk management assist in the reduction of earthquake risk in Bangladesh? With the increase of practice of supply chain risk management in earthquake hazard control in Bangladesh, people will be conscious about earthquake and how to respond during and after an earthquake. Long-term benefits will be achieved and earthquake risks will be optimized. Thank you everyone for your time and attention.
Thank you, everyone. So this presentation was from Zannat and Asmol, but unfortunately, because of the time difference, they are not online. You can email them if there is any question to ask. All right, so there is all for the first day of conference. Tomorrow will be workshops day. We will have three workshops on, first is on product evaluation. The second one is about supply chain. And the last one is about co-designing the models and some practical tools about it. Please join us for tomorrow. There, I posted the link of Eventbrite for the conference, and there is a section for the workshops as well. Feel free to join us, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for the authors and presenters, and thanks for all of your attention and questions. And see you maybe tomorrow. Bye.